Hey there, parents and families. My name is Andrew Hoffman. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to talk about the fascinating and often misunderstood topic of demonstrated interest, what it is, how colleges track it, and how your student can use it to their advantage. So let's dive in. Okay, starting off with the basics. Demonstrated interest refers to ways in which a student is enthusiastic or engaged in that particular college. Colleges will gauge this level of interest to predict how likely it is that that student is going to enroll if admitted. That is the college's yield rate, which is incredibly important. Essentially, it's the percentage that enroll based on the number of students that are admitted to that institution. For some institutions, demonstrated interest is incredibly important. Here are some official acts of demonstrated interest that some colleges might track. First, campus visits. Signing up for an information session or campus tour. You can learn more about that in my Visiting Colleges video. Opening emails. Believe it or not, some colleges track the emails that your student is opening and the click-through rate. So are they clicking on links within that email? Attending summer programs. So a lot of colleges offer what's called a pre-college summer program. This is usually completely different than the admissions office. It's a separate unit or department or office that puts this on. And typically you can learn from faculty members and stay on campus and the whole 9 yards. But these are usually pay-to-play programs, meaning they typically cost thousands and thousands of dollars to participate in, and they only sometimes move the scale a smidge in the admissions process. So what we typically told students in the admissions process when I was an admissions officer was, we want you to be productive during the summer. We want you to do something that you really enjoy doing. That may be a summer program at my particular institution, but I wouldn't go as far as saying, by participating, now you're going to have a significant edge in terms of demonstrated interest. Visiting their website. So some colleges can also employ what are called pings, and that's essentially looking at, once you click on a link in their email that leads to their website, which websites are you spending time on, how long are you spending on those particular pages, and that can factor into an algorithm that sort of predicts that demonstrated interest and yield rate. And finally, applying to and attending a college fly-in program. Now, there are about 75 or 80 colleges in the United States that offer a college fly-in program. This is an all-expenses-paid trip to that institution. It's usually reserved for those that are historically underrepresented in higher education or on that particular campus. But in applying for that program, attending that program, that can usually signal a lot of demonstrated interest into that institution. Now, pro tip, if you want even more information about fly-in programs, the list of fly-in programs, criteria that college admissions officers are employing in selecting students for fly-in programs, I highly recommend that you sign up for my newsletter. My newsletter for parents actually goes through all of these pieces, and you can do so for free on my website, askdrhoffman.com. Now, there are several known schools that take demonstrated interest, or at least official acts, into account when making an admissions decision. American University, Tulane University, Lehigh University are just a sampling of a lot of institutions that take this into account. So be sure to think about that when you're considering those types of institutions and asking colleges, do you take demonstrated interest into account? You can always email the admissions office, or when they visit your school or a college fair, you can interact with them and ask that question. Now let's talk about unofficial acts of demonstrated interest. These actions are often tracked by those that take demonstrated interest into account, but even for colleges that don't look at demonstrated interest, they can leave a lasting impression. Remember, admission officers are human, right? This is not an AI model. Within an AI model, you might say you can ignore these factors, but with humans, you have implicit bias, and so sometimes this can sort of creep in. Here are some examples of unofficial acts. Reaching out. So every student should have an assigned admissions representative. This is based on where they attend high school. So when I was an admissions officer, I'd represent students who attended high school in Minnesota or Wisconsin or Indiana or Louisiana. You can usually find that listing on the college website. I would have your student reach out and ask a few thoughtful questions that cannot be answered on the college website. that can typically leave a pretty good impression of that student's interest in what the admissions officer has to say about that topic. But word of caution, don't overdo it. I still remember a student from maybe 10 to 15 years ago in my early admissions career who would email me nonstop, and I received photos and sort of updates of her life on a monthly basis at least. I think it was probably more than that. And so when we got to the admissions review process, I had a not so great impression of her. I tried to let that not affect my admissions review, but it does creep in. Meeting at college fairs. So have your student engage in college fairs either in person or virtual college fairs. The same rule applies. Ask thoughtful questions. We would typically get very similar questions at college fairs like, how's your psychology program? Not as thoughtful. You can do some research on the psychology program. You can actually ask maybe more about like, are you offering clinical psychology or other ways in which we can engage in the curriculum? That might be a more thoughtful question to ask. High school visits. So attending a presentation when the admissions officer visits your student's high school can be really important. Sometimes that student might be the only one in the presentation, so admission officers typically remember those students. And remember, admission officers have a really large job. They usually have multi-state territories, and they can sometimes visit 75 or 100 high schools within a fall period when there are literally thousands of schools that they represent. And so visiting your school and getting in front of that admissions officer can be relatively important. And another example is writing a thank you note. So this doesn't have to be by hand. You can just email this, or that your student can email this to the admissions officer after meeting at a college fair or a high school visit presentation. I receive very few thank you notes over my years and years in college admissions, and so when you do receive this, it does leave an impression. Now, even if a college says they don't track demonstrated interest, a well-timed email or a positive impression during a high school visit can leave a really great lasting impression. Years ago, I began a program at a coffee shop for my institution at Vanderbilt. And so I would invite students and their families to a local Starbucks or other coffee shop to meet with me, to ask questions. And I remember a particular student and her mom in Hickory, North Carolina, who came to the Starbucks, asked really thoughtful questions, and who later applied, was admitted, and enrolled at my institution. And I still remember that student. So be sure to think about this, not just in what is going to get me in, but how can I make a positive impression during the college admissions process. Finally, let's talk about the ultimate act of demonstrating interest, applying early decision or early action. By applying early decision, your student is committing to attend if admitted, and it's a really serious commitment to that institution. Applying early action is a non-binding process, but it still signals to the institution that that place is one of their top choices. If you want to learn more about early decision or early action, I actually did a video about this that I'll link above, and you can take a deeper dive into that topic. Now, how do you actually know if that college takes demonstrated interest into account, and sort of what counts for that particular college? Let's take a dive into that. It's hard to know definitively if a college takes demonstrated interest into account in the admissions process, but here are a few tips. Google or go to the college website and look for their common data set. Now, not every college participates or releases a common data set, but a lot of colleges do. And once you get to the common data set, you can look for a section called C7, the Basis for Selection Table. At the end of the table, there's a row called Level of Applicants' Interest on a scale of very important to not considered. While colleges are not always 100% honest, for example, you can see that Tulane University indicates this is an important factor, and I would argue based on my experience that this should be very important. At least they're indicating that interest is taken into account. Ask. You can always meet with the admissions officer or ask via email. Now again, they might not be 100% honest with their answer, and they're probably not going to delineate exactly what criteria goes into their demonstrated interest index, for example, but at least you should get an honest answer for a yes, no, do you take it into account? Finally, consider signing up for my course, The Parent's Ultimate Course on College Admissions. There, I have a lesson on demonstrated interest, and I'll also share a list of colleges that are known to take interest into consideration. I'll get into things like how does the interview play into demonstrated interest, things that I just can't get into on my YouTube channel just for length. And you can find this course on my website, AskDrHoffman.com. To wrap up, demonstrated interest is a valuable tool that you should know about in a very competitive landscape of selective college admissions. Whether it's sending a thank you note, or attending a college fair or high school visit, or applying early decision, all of these things can signal to the institution that you're really serious about them. Thanks so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to click like and subscribe to this channel to receive more college admission tips. Now in my next video, I'm going to go over the role that parents and families play in the college admissions process as it relates directly to your student. If you want to watch that video now, you can click the link above. Good luck, and I'll see you in the next video.